And good morning, hockey fans, and what is going on? It is your host of NHL Weekly, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to what is basically now just episode 2 of NHL Weekly live here on the Hockey Podcast Network YouTube channel. And thank you all so much for taking time out of your Monday morning to check us out. Really do appreciate it. We did our first episode last week, kind of previewing the standings and also who I thought was going to make the playoffs, as well as who would obviously eventually get to the Stanley Cup Finals and who would be your 2024 Stanley Cup champion. We already got my boy Matthew Lutz in the chat saying, "Yo, Neil, how are you doing, my guy?" Doing very well this morning, Matthew. Thank you so much for asking. It is a beautiful day here in the Garden State that is New Jersey, and obviously I got a Garden State hockey shirt on, but yeah, this is now the second. I guess you'd actually say that this is technically the first full week of the NHL season, since obviously last Monday there was no games played, but we have a full slate of NHL action as every team is now officially underway and we are finally into consistently talking about hockey. And today on this episode of NHL Weekly, we have some very interesting things to talk about. First and foremost, we have 3 extensions that happened, 2 players and 1 head coach. We're going to obviously talk about Connor Bedard and his very good start to his NHL career. There was also a goaltender in San Jose who had an unbelievable performance and still ended up losing the game. And then we're gonna finish today's episode by just taking a quick glance at the NHL standings, since we're only 2 or 3 games in, but nonetheless, I think this is something I'm going to do every week because obviously the standings will be drastically different every week. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. So let us jump in with our first topic of the day. It's the first of 3 extensions we're going to talk about. The first one is another Buffalo Sabres extension. If you remember last week, we talked about Rasmus Dahlin getting his contract extension from Buffalo. Well, just about a week ago, a little less than a week ago, the Buffalo Sabres decided to lock down another one of their players on the back end as they signed Owen Power, the former number 1 overall pick, to a 7-year extension at $8.35 million. And so this comes after the Sabres signed Rasmus Dahlin, as it's mentioned here, to an 8-year extension through 2032 at $11 million annually. So Owen Power will be playing with an 8.35 AAV, and the deal will make Power the 15th highest salary defenseman in the NHL next season and runs through 2031. So in case you're wondering, the extension will actually kick in next year. So this is the last year of Owen Power's entry-level contract. So obviously he's not making a whole lot right now, but next year he and certainly Rasmus Dahlin will both be making a considerable amount of money. But I think that it's really refreshing to see the Sabres lock down their core guys. We've talked about it last week, how the Sabres, just organization as a whole, has really kind of moved into this whole decision-making of it is now time to lock down our core. I think that's important. I think it's going to go a long way for them, and I think it's great that they were able to actually get these guys signed long-term. I think it shows you also what the Sabres are actually building in Buffalo, that they're making it a place where people feel proud and want to be there, and that's really important, especially that I've mentioned this before, that I think the Sabres are on the rise. I think that they are that next team, especially looking at this season, that could very well surprise a lot of people, that could really go and have a very successful season, and who knows, probably break the longest playoff drought of any team in the NHL and one of the longest playoff droughts in North American sports right now. Also, I just realized I got a couple more people in the chat. My good friend Chandra is in the chat. She says, good morning. Good morning, Chandra. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, my good buddy, Andrew H. Good to see you as well. And also my guy, RJ, is in the chat. Thank you all again for hanging out with me this morning. But again, going back to our first topic, again, we are talking about Owen Power's extension in Buffalo. Coach Don Granato said what he does on a nightly basis is just amazing when you factor in his age and lack of experience in our league to dominate situations and really full games the way he does. And it is really great. And it says Power is the last member of what management has identified as part of its core group to sign a long-term deal. Tage Thompson last year signed a 7-year, $50 million contract. Dylan Cousins last year as well, 7 years, $49.7 million. And then obviously mentioning Rasmus Dahlin and Matthias Samuelsson, with Samuelsson making his 7 years, $30 million. So I give a lot of credit to Kevyn Adams because here's why. If you go back to 2 years ago, when the Sabres were having their situation with, are they going to move on from Jack Eichel or not, a lot of people were very critical of Kevyn Adams and that they wondered if he was capable of doing the job of building this Sabres team. And now you fast forward 2 years later, and you can see the excitement and the belief and everything that's going on in Buffalo. And if you ask any Sabres fan right now, they are super excited about not only the present, but certainly for many years to come. And you know that there is going to be a shift in power in the NHL. There's going to be teams that for a long time were not very good that are now becoming the top dogs. You know, the Devils is one of them. Carolina is obviously one of them. You talk about teams like, Vegas kind of counts in this regard. But if you think about the old top dogs, right? Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Washington, teams like that, they're starting to kind of fade out because now they're going to be eventually getting to the point where it's time to kind of start a new era and rebuild. Whereas teams like the Devils and the Kraken and the Buffalo Sabres are now the new kids on the block. And I'm really excited because I have a soft spot for the Buffalo Sabres. I'm really happy that they were able to get this type of extension done. They continue to establish the core, and I think that's important. When you're building a Stanley Cup contender, a team that you want to compete for a long period of time and you're rebuilding, you want to eventually establish a core of young players who are going to be the guys that you are going to rely on as much as possible when you actually get underway in terms of competing. And you see that Sabres and Kevyn Adams and that management are identifying it, and they are getting these guys done. And again, it shows you a lot that a lot of these guys that I just mentioned, Tage Thompson, Matthias Samuelsson, Rasmus Dahlin, now Owen Power, Dylan Cousins, you could see that these guys are excited about signing long-term, that they want to be a part of the solution and no longer be part of the problem. They want to be here. And honestly, I think the Jack Eichel trade is the thing that's really going to help propel the Sabres team to taking the next steps to being competitive and getting back in the playoffs and eventually competing for a Stanley Cup. So again, the Buffalo Sabres going after another one of their young players and getting an extension done as they last week signed Owen Power to a 7-year deal worth $8.3 million per season, and that extension will kick in at the start of next year, 2024-25. So that is honestly really, really important here, and really glad that they were able to actually get that done and go from there. Now, let's move over to our second extension because, again, like I mentioned, we had a couple of players and a coach that actually ended up getting an extension. We will shift over to the Western Conference and talk about the Colorado Avalanche, who extended one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL, and that is Devon Toews. As last week, a couple days ago, back on October 13th, Friday, they signed Devon Toews to a 7-year extension at $7.75 million. And here, as you can see on the screen, here is a rundown of what you're going to see. Also should mention Toews has a full no movement clause in 2024-25 and 2025-2026, and then it becomes a 12-team no trade list in 2026-27 and remains in place for the life of the deal. So really, for Devon Toews, the idea is that he is going to be around for basically the rest of his career in Colorado. Olaf Fubb, by the way, just jumped in chat, said, "Sup, dudes, go Sabres." So we do have a Sabres fan in the chat. He says it's power time. Olaf Fubb, would love to hear your thoughts on not only the Owen Power extension, but also all of the other ones, including Rasmus Dahlin the week and change ago, and all the other ones, and your thoughts overall on the Buffalo Sabres moving forward here with the core that they have. So let's quickly go over the year-to-year salary for Devon Toews. So again, this extension, just like Owen Powers, will start next season. So you got 7.75 every single year except two. In 2026-27, he'll be making only $5.25 million, but also gets a $1 million signing bonus. So he'll make roughly about just over $6 million that year. And then in 2030-31, he'll be making exactly $6 million. But every other, and I also just noticed that in 2029-30, he'll be making 7.5. But most of the time, he will be making $7.75 million. And that comes out to about $50.75 million in total value. And his deal starts in his age 30 season, and he will be in his late 30s, 37 to be exact, by the time his contract is expired. And it says this likely means that Toews will spend the rest of his career with the Avalanche, something he expressed interest in before the start of the season. And if you remember, the New York Islanders were the ones that obviously had him first. They traded him to Colorado in the 2020-21 season for 2 second-round picks. And I remember at the time, when the Islanders made that deal, it was kind of one of those that it almost felt like that the Islanders felt that they had to make. And obviously the Avalanche took advantage of that opportunity, and they were able to get one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL and get him locked down. He is a guy that can put up a good amount of points, can also really, really be good defensively. I think overall he's just a really, really, really sound defenseman. And I think that's really, really important, especially for an Avalanche team that is looking to try to get themselves back into full-on contention. You look at last year with the Colorado Avalanche, despite obviously not having Gabriel Landeskog in the lineup all season last year, they were still able to be the best team points-wise in the Western Conference going into the playoffs. Ultimately ended up getting upset in the first round to the Seattle Kraken, and now they look to try to redeem themselves going into this season. And I think it's important. I really would like to hope that Gabriel Landeskog does come back at some point, but right now things are going well for Colorado. They've won both of their games so far. They are 2-0, and they have scored 7 goals and only given up 3. So they're off to a good start during this season. They just came off of a shootout win against the San Jose Sharks last week. So they're off to a good start so far, and you fully expect, I fully expect that Colorado is going to be a team that's going to be one of the teams to beat in the Western Conference when they are fully healthy. By the way, RJ showing us the slate of games that we have here. We got 5 games going on tonight. You have Detroit against Columbus at 7. Chicago versus Toronto. The first time we'll see Connor Bedard go up against Austin Matthews. Florida Panthers are in New Jersey taking on the Devils. Fun fact, I will actually be in attendance at the Prudential Center tonight for the game against the Florida Panthers. It'll be the second game that I've gone to so far for the New Jersey Devils. And again, really quickly, guys, I mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again here. I am also, in addition to doing NHL Weekly, I am the host of the Devil's State of Mind podcast here on the Hockey Podcast Network, which covers the New Jersey Devils. Try to post an episode, usually about once every week, just kind of going over everything. We're on Twitter at Devil's State, also on Instagram at Devil's State of Mind. So make sure you guys go check it out. We're also on YouTube as well. So not only can you get the audio version of the podcast, but you can also get the video form as well if you so desire. So make sure you guys go check it out as I talk to you and get you caught up with everything you need to know about the New Jersey Devils. Other games, again, Calgary versus Washington. My guy Kyle, he's going to be watching that one tonight. And the Arizona Coyotes coming off of a shootout win in their first game of the season on Friday night against the New Jersey Devils, will be at Madison Square Garden taking on the Rangers tonight at 7. So those are the 5 games slated for Monday night here today. And also, again, please don't forget to leave a like on this on NHL Weekly. Also, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we go live here on THPN. We just reached recently, I think over the weekend, over 4,000 subscribers here on THPN. So thank you all so much for getting us there. And now let's try to push to get to 5K in the next couple of weeks. Let's continue to share this with your family and friends and get them to like and subscribe as well. So again, going back to our last extension, Devon Toews, 7 years at $7.75 million to stay long-term with the Colorado Avalanche. That extension will begin in the next season, 2024-25. And now we go to our final extension that we are talking about, and it's actually a coach. And we found this out last week that the New Jersey Devils have extended head coach Lindy Ruff to a multi-year contract extension. Devils announced it, and obviously they're not going to tell us what the term is or or how much he's making. I'm sure there's a way that you could actually figure that out. But this was something that was probably going to happen because here's how things transpired. So at the end of last season for the Devils, and we didn't find this out till a couple weeks ago, that Lindy Ruff actually had an opt-in for another year, which was this year, because it was believed that last year was the quote-unquote final year of his contract, and that the questions were going to be, were the Devils going to bring him back? Were they going to look for a coach that was going to take them to the next level? What were they going to do? But Tom Fitzgerald, the general manager of the New Jersey Devils, made it clear earlier this offseason that he was going to keep Lindy Ruff moving forward. And then he eventually mentioned that Lindy Ruff had an opt-in. So this was actually technically the last year of his contract. And then it was also reported that the Devils were working on a contract extension with Lindy Ruff, and they made it official last week. So now the Devils have Lindy Ruff locked up for another couple of years. They mentioned multi-year extension, so we don't really know exactly how long that's going to be, but nonetheless, the Devils want to keep the gang around, and that's exactly what they're doing here. Is again, they extend Lindy Ruff. Tom Fitzgerald said this young, exciting team has developed and thrived under Lindy's stewardship since he joined the Devils organization. Lindy is one of the winningest coaches in NHL history, and his extension is well deserved. Looking forward to continued team success this upcoming season and beyond. We're incredibly fortunate as an organization to have Lindy Ruff behind the bench to guide this group who've made significant strides under his leadership. I've always believed that Lindy was and continues to be the right man behind the bench for this team. From the beginning, he's done a tremendous job piloting our young group, and we're excited to see this team's continued success under his watch as we take the next steps. So Lindy Ruff, one of the most successful head coaches, ranking first in wins, 834 among NHL coaches. And October 18th, 2023, which will be on Wednesday, became the fifth. I don't know why it says October 18th. That day hasn't happened yet. I think that's a misprint. Ruff became the fifth winningest coach in league history with 783 wins. I think this was last year. I think they meant to say 2022. Passing Al Arbour, he would go on to earn his 800th career win on November 26th. Again, I think this is wrong. One of the sixth NHL coaches all time. And right now, Ruff is 15 victories behind Ken Hitchcock for fourth all time among NHL coaches. And since this was actually signed the day before the season started, he is currently 14 wins away from passing Ken. Well, now he's 15 away from passing Ken Hitchcock. He'll look to try to get it down to 13 in the game tonight against the Florida Panthers. But nonetheless, I will just say this from obviously a personal perspective, because again, I do cover the New Jersey Devils here on THPN. This was something that, again, I think was going to happen. Lindy Ruff, I've been critical of him at times during his tenure in New Jersey. And last year, they finally got over the hump and really exploded onto the NHL scene. The players themselves seem to really love playing for him. They love his system. It seems to be very good for the team that we have. And at the end of the day, the Devils want to keep everything going. And I understand it from Tom Fitzgerald's perspective. This is the first and still only coach that Tom Fitzgerald has ever worked with. Now, obviously, he had Elaine Nasruddin as interim head coach, but this is the first and only full-time head coach that Tom Fitzgerald has worked for. He's loved his relationship, and at this point, up until this point, it has worked out very, very well. What is going on, Bailey Curtis? Good morning. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Congrats on the extension. Great things in store for you guys with him at the helm. Thank you so much for the compliment. Yeah, I think for the Devils, I've mentioned it many times. It is an exciting time to be a New Jersey Devils fan, and it's so interesting. You look at the first two games last year, the Devils were 0-2. The Fire Lindy chants were coming out. We don't have to talk about that anymore. It's happened. But the Devils are 1-0-1. They won their home opener against the Detroit Red Wings, and then they ended up losing in a shootout to the Coyotes on Friday. And like I mentioned before, they will look to try to move and get their second win of the season when they take on Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers. It should be a good game tonight, no question about it. RJ also giving us kind of a slate of how many games per week that we're going to see this week. So again, Monday, today, we'll have 5 games. Tomorrow on Tuesday will be 9. Wednesday we'll only have 2. Thursday will be the most. There will be 12 games going on. Friday, only 2. Saturday, big 15-game slate. And then Sunday, there will only be 2. So kind of a little infrequent in terms of just, how many games this day, how many games this day. Like, it's a very interesting situation. The NHL schedule makers are very, very interesting in how they go about things. But nonetheless, again, going back to what I was saying before, Lindy Ruff signing a multi-year contract extension to remain the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. Again, was a Jack Adams Award finalist for Coach of the Year last year. And we'll see what the Devils and Lindy Ruff in particular have for an encore here, as this is their first legitimate year of competing. Off to a good start, getting 3 out of a possible 4 points. We'll see how they do here in their first full week of action here in this NHL season. So now that we have gotten beyond the contract extensions, let's talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in the NHL season. And there are 2 things that obviously are going to stick out in my mind. Well, at least one of them is probably obvious. And that is talking about the man that is, well, you say man, but he's like a child basically. And that is talking about Connor Bedard. Now, Connor Bedard has gotten off to a very solid start in his NHL career. He's played 3 games. He got a goal in the home opener, so obviously he got his first goal out of the way. He's also gotten a couple of points. He got his first NHL point on one of the goals in the Blackhawks' comeback win on opening night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he has a goal, 2 assists for 3 points with a plus-minus of -1. So we got an assist, an assist and a point against Pittsburgh. He got his only goal so far against Boston. And then a couple of days ago on Saturday, actually, he tallied himself another assist. So far, he is a point per game player, as he's gotten a point in all 3 of his first 3 games in the National Hockey League. So that is quite impressive. Fabs Plays Game says first goal was in Boston. Oh, okay, it was in Boston. Thank you. Thank you for that, FaZe. I forgot that it was in Boston. It also says it right there. The Blackhawks have yet to play their first game at home. They've been on the road at Pittsburgh, at Boston, and at Montreal. But Fab Plays Games, thank you for that information and correcting me. Do very much appreciate it. But so far, I mean, Connor Bedard is doing exactly what everybody expected Connor Bedard to do. As we were talking about him when this season got underway. I will say, though, that his NHL debut was probably going to be one of the most memorable ones because for a couple reasons. One, in pregame warmups, he forgot his stick. So he had to go back in the locker room and get his stick. Second thing, he did not wear his helmet in warmups, and now you're not allowed to not wear your helmet during warmups. So it actually ended up being a pretty big fine for him, but the Blackhawks said, don't worry, we got you covered. And then they had the head referee mic'd up as they were getting ready to start this game and, really start the season. And the ref said to Sidney Crosby, because it was Sidney Crosby versus Connor Bedard, he said, hey, Sid, welcome to another season. Nothing special for Sidney Crosby. It's just another year for him. Then he looks at Connor Bedard and says, hey, Connor, welcome to the NHL. Let's have a good one tonight. And Connor Bedard ended up losing his first career faceoff. He even mentioned it to Emily Kaplan that he was embarrassed that he lost his first NHL faceoff to Sidney Crosby that easily. And obviously there was excitement for him to be paired with Taylor Hall, but now that Taylor Hall will be out for quite some time, it'll be interesting to see what Connor Bedard can do as he will certainly have to carry a bigger amount of the workload moving forward. Fab Plays Game says, Boston wore white at home, which was real confusing. Yeah, I just happened to flip over. I was watching something else, and I flipped over to that game, and it took me a while to realize that the game was in Boston because the Bruins were wearing their white jerseys. They're wearing those new ones, those Centennial ones, which look absolutely fantastic. And I love it. I think that was also the Bruins home opener, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, they looked really good. Also, Brad Marchand being Brad Marchand and trying to scar Connor Bedard for life. But that's honestly how it goes. We also do have some breaking news here from RJ. Los Angeles Kings forward Victor Arvidsson to undergo back surgery and will be out month to month. Wow, a big loss for the Los Angeles Kings. Victor Arvidsson had a really solid year last year. He's a guy that the Kings rely a lot in terms of being a consistent goal scorer, and so now he's going to be out month to month. It's going to be tough. So that's really our first major injury that happened in season. The first major one is obviously Andrei Vasilevsky being out the first 2 months after going surgery during the offseason. But going back to Connor Bedard, he's off to a good start. Definitely right now the front runner to win the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year. And we'll see how things go. And I'm really interested to see how things go for him, especially when he makes his Chicago debut when he plays his first home game of the regular season. Another injury update, New Jersey Devils forward Tomas Nosek, lower body injury that he sustained against Arizona. He will be out day to day. So a little banged up for the Devils. So we'll see how their fourth line will handle it. Quickly here, our last kind of news thing, and then we will show you the standings. Then we will wrap up this week's episode of NHL Weekly. There was our first kind of major impressive goalie performance, and that comes from San Jose Sharks goaltender Mackenzie Blackwood, who was making his San Jose Sharks debut after he was traded. Well, he did like a sign and trade to the San Jose Sharks from the New Jersey Devils. Also, if you guys can see this picture, ironically, 2 of the 3 guys that are here were on the New Jersey Devils last season. Mackenzie Blackwood and also Fabian Zetterlund, who was traded in the Timo Meier trade that sent Timo Meier to New Jersey. Now, Mackenzie Blackwood in the shootout loss to the Colorado Avalanche made 31 saves in the first 2 periods and actually finished with an impressive 51 saves on 52 shots. But it was not enough as they lost in a shootout. They lost the game 2-1. Mikko Rantanen ended up scoring the game-winning goal in a packed crowd. I believe that was the home opener for San Jose. But nonetheless, it was a tremendous performance from Mackenzie Blackwood. But given the fact that the San Jose Sharks are going to be pretty bad this year, he didn't get a whole lot of support. Avalanche vets Mikhail Makar scored with 1:26 left in regulation as it ruined Mackenzie Blackwood's chance of getting a huge shutout win against the Avalanche. And then Rantanen scored in the second round of the shootout and ended up winning the game for them. Alexander Georgiev finished stopping 20 of 21 shots that he faced, and the Sharks now have lost 30 games in overtime or a shootout since the start of 2021-22. And so for Mackenzie Blackwood making his San Jose Sharks debut, it's very unfortunate that it wasn't enough for him to get the win. And it's going to, unfortunately, for both him and Kaapo Kahkonen, the 2 goaltenders for San Jose, it's going to be like that throughout most of the season. The San Jose Sharks are a very bad hockey team, and they're going to be one of, if not the worst team in the NHL this season. And if you think about where the Sharks were for the last 20-plus years of being one of the teams constantly competing for a cup, I'm sure it's hard for a lot of San Jose Sharks longtime fans to kind of see that this is where the Sharks are going. And, look, Greer said it himself. Mike Greer said it himself, the GM of the Sharks. It's going to take a long time for the Sharks to get good again because they have a lot of old contracts that need to be moved. They traded Erik Karlsson during this year, and, this is going to be a long year for them. What a game for Blackwood. Colorado was sweating in that third period to get that tying goal. Yeah, it must have been super frustrating in a game that they felt they should have won easily, that it had to go to a shootout. But they get the win nonetheless. And like I mentioned before, they're 2-0 to start the year. Chandra said Blackwood killed it that night. Loved watching him. Also, a couple of other former Devils as well. Miles Wood and the man they call Tuna, Tomas Tatar, also were in that game. A lot of former Devils in that one that were playing over in the Western Conference. Kind of a weird situation. But shout out to Mackenzie Blackwood on a 51 save performance. It's just unfortunate he could not get the win. But he's looking for a bounce back year after the last couple of years dealing with a lot of injuries. And hopefully he can, have himself a relatively strong year in terms of performance, because the win-loss record's probably not going to look all that good. So that's really kind of the major things that happened in the first week here in the NHL. Another update. Again, we're getting a lot of Devils updates tonight, I guess, because, again, I'm wearing this. Sergei Bobrovsky against Vitek Vanacek are the goaltending matchup for tonight's game against the Panthers and the Devils. Again, like I said, I will be in attendance for that one tonight. Really excited to be there at the Rock. Already the second game that I've been to, again, covering the New Jersey Devils. Devils State of Mind podcast. Please go check it out. Would highly, highly recommend it and appreciate it. So lastly here, before we wrap up this week's episode of NHL Weekly, here is a quick look at the standings. The Boston Bruins 2-0. Technically speaking, I guess you'd say they are in first place. Toronto also 2-0. Ottawa Senators 2-1-0 after 3 games. Montreal is 1-0-1. Detroit 1-1-0. Tampa Bay 1-2-0. So after winning their first game of the year against Nashville, they have dropped the last 2. And as you can see, scoring just 11 goals but giving up 14, you can tell the goaltending is going to be an issue without Andrei Vasilevsky. Florida Panthers 0-2-0 to start the year. They've scored just 4 goals and given up 8. They will look to try to get their first win tonight here in New Jersey. And then the Buffalo Sabres, who I was just hyping up, are 0-2-0 to start the year. Metropolitan Division, what a surprise. Again, early on in the season, but again, very close. Pittsburgh 2-1-0 after 3 games. Carolina 2-1-0. Ended up getting pretty beat up in their last game, I think, yesterday. New Jersey Devils 1-0-1. Islanders are 1-0 because they've only played 1 game. It was on Saturday. So, they're a little behind schedule. New York Rangers 1-1-0. Columbus Blue Jackets 1-1-0. Philadelphia Flyers 1-1-0. And the Washington Capitals are 0-1 after their loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins over the weekend. So now shifting over to the West, as mentioned before, Colorado 2-0. St. Louis Blues 1-0-1. Arizona 1-0. Again, won their only game in a shootout win against the Devils. Dallas Stars 1-0. Winnipeg Jets 1-1-0. Minnesota Wild 1-1-0. Nashville 1-2-0. And the Chicago Blackhawks are 1-2-0. And then shifting over to the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights off to the best start of any team right now. They have won all 3 of their games, winning pretty convincingly as they've outscored their opponents 12-3. Pretty remarkable so far. 3-0-0. Vancouver Canucks. Right now, everybody take a screenshot. Everyone take a screenshot right now of the Vancouver Canucks being 2-0 and in second place in the Pacific Division. Just keep it right here, right? 2-0-0. Anaheim Ducks 1-1-0. Calgary 1-1-0. Los Angeles Kings 0-1-1. San Jose Sharks 0-1-1. Seattle Kraken 0-2-1. And the Edmonton Oilers, again, take a screenshot, are 0-2-0, and you can see it, guys. The goaltending is going to be a problem. Now, granted, one of the games that they lost was an 8-1 thrashing that they got handed to by the Vancouver Canucks, but nonetheless, scored just 4 goals and have given up 12. So, again, I know it's early, but you can see a little bit of concern for certain things there. Oh, my good buddy, Anaheim Ducks across the pond, covering the Anaheim Ducks here on THPN. Stop the vote, LOL. Yeah, no, right. Stop the vote. It's over. The Canucks are making the playoffs. That's how it is. That is our overreactions to kind of kick off the 2023-24 season. But nonetheless, excited for now the first official full week of NHL action starting tonight with 5 different games. Looking forward to it. And we'll see what we have to talk about by this time next week. But on that note, guys, that's going to do it for me here for this week on NHL Weekly. Thank you guys, as always, for hanging out with me this morning. Really do appreciate it. While you're at it, make sure, again, to leave a like on the stream. Also subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new episodes of NHL Weekly, and also all of the live watch-alongs of NHL games of your favorite teams every single week here as well. Make sure to follow us on Instagram above at HockeyPodNet, also on Twitter at HockeyPodNet. And while you're at it, give me a follow as well on my personal Twitter at the NVP Show, THENVPSHOW. And also, make sure to go check out the Devil State of Mind podcast. New episodes every week covering your New Jersey Devils. We are on Twitter at Devil State, also on Instagram at Devil State of Mind. Make sure to go also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to also, if you're on Apple or Spotify, give me a 5-star rating. Helps out the podcast tremendously. And last but certainly not least, shout out to our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of THPN. And with so many sports going on, we are in that wonderful era right now where we got NHL, the NBA preseason. You have the Major League Baseball playoffs. We are now into the League Championship Series. You got the NFL. You got college football. And you got so much more. You have so many sports to place bets on and to win huge cash prizes. So again, if you want to get in on the action when you sign up for DraftKings, use our promo code THPN. And don't forget to tell them that your boy, Neil Villapiano, sent you. And again, RJ saying, help me out. Please don't forget to hit the likes. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe bell as well. Thank you. And yes, thank you to everybody for hanging out with me this morning. And we will see you next week on another episode of NHL Weekly. Everyone have a great week. And as I always say at the end of every episode, make sure to rock on.